So, as a past life regressionist, I travel through time. When people say, "What's your job?" I like to say, "I'm a time traveler." I was trained by Dolores Cannon and Brian Weiss in this work, and I absolutely love it. And I thought I would come on here today and just tell you some of the people that I met this week throughout time. So, the first one I'm going to tell you about is someone who came to see me who was a soldier in World War II. He was a German soldier, and the life began with him lying on the ground in the forest, and he was very cold, and it was getting dark. And after he'd been into the life for a little bit, he realized that he'd been shot. And he was right outside of a house where a family lived, and he had been planning on going to ask them for help, for water, and for maybe something to eat. He meant them no harm at all, but they shot him, and he died right there. And so as we were exploring the life, he figured out that the reason he had joined the war was because his wife and small son had been killed. He wasn't sure by whom, but somebody at the beginning of World War II. And he had a daughter left at home. And he, at one point, he went back to his barracks. You know, I had him go back in time to before he was dying on the floor of the forest. And he went back in time to his barracks, and he had a little metal box where he kept his treasures. And one of the treasures was a silver cross on a necklace. Another one was a black and white photograph, very yellowed with age, of a woman on the beach. And the other was a little blue wooden car painted blue. And the wheels were made of buttons. And there's always a moment in a session where I'm just like, you can't make this up. Like, you know, I asked the man afterwards, did you have a little car with wheels made out of buttons? And he was like, no, I never heard of such a thing. So that's what gives it the real flavor when you're doing these sessions. And we realized later that the silver cross had belonged to his wife. She had worn it around her neck. So that was one life. There was more to it, but I'm just giving you little tidbits. Another lifetime we visited was a Japanese businessman who was very, very successful. This was probably in the 1980s, this lifetime. And he worked in a building that was 130 stories high. His office was on the 130th floor. And he had brought some shame to his family. And he was right about to have to go into a meeting where everything was exposed. And rather than go into the meeting, he was sitting there thinking about what to do. And I asked my client, you know, what is he wearing? We always ask, like, do you have any jewelry? Do you have any ornamentation? And apparently he had a tie pin made out of jade that to him represented his family. It had been given to him by a grandfather or somebody in the family, and he always wore it as a kind of badge of pride. And that was a moment where it's just like, that's not the kind of thing people would think of. It's just such a wonderful detail. So anyway, rather than go into this meeting, he goes out on a kind of a stairwell, a fire escape, and he jumps from 130 stories and dies. And I asked him if he took the pin off beforehand to give to one of his children or to leave on his desk. And he said, no, I took it with me as a kind of talisman to sort of keep me company as I made this decision, because I was trying to honor my family when I did it. And when he went into the afterlife, the first thing that happened, I asked him about his life review, and the first thing that happened was he didn't go straight to a life review. What he did was he went to a place that showed him what everybody felt like after he had committed suicide. And he immediately regretted the pain that he had caused his family and friends, and, you know, really regretted some of his choices. So that was that lifetime. Then we had a really cool lifetime with a priestess in ancient times, maybe 3,000 years ago, a woman who was a priestess on the shores of a red lake in the Dead Sea, and she performed rites and rituals for people as they grew up, you know, growing rites, and then also pregnancy, childbirth, death, grief. She would help people with all of those rituals as a sort of village priestess. and she gave us a wonderful purification sort of cocktail of oils, sacred oils to use, and how to use them on the body. So that was really interesting. But at one point, she told me that her sister was floating in the Dead Sea, and they had a whole ritual for using the salt in the Dead Sea. And she said the Dead Sea is like a library. When you enter the Dead Sea, you have access to information that from all the people who've ever been in it. It's a very sacred place. And it was a kind of a portal or a library. So I immediately ordered some Dead Sea salts, and I'm trying to find some Dead Sea mud, because that was the other thing that she healed people with. But I asked her if she could give us an example of one of her incantations or songs. And she sang this most incredibly beautiful song, which I may ask her if I have permission to post that, because I did do a clip of just her singing that song. So maybe I'll do that. This is getting a little long. I don't know if I should keep going. The next person we visited, and this isn't all the same person, this is multiple clients across the week. We went to an Amazonian forest where my client was a young man, very, very skinny young man who lived with snakes lying in the trees around him. He was a fisherman, and they ate snakes and they ate fish. And, you know, I did something I sort of sometimes do, which is when we're in a village like that, I'll just say, hey, is there a shaman in your village? Yep, there's a shaman in the village. So we went to go visit the shaman, and we asked the shaman to do some healing on this gentleman, my client, through the boy. And the shaman did. And that was really, really wonderful. And the next one I'm going to tell you about is a young Russian ballerina, a little girl who did ballet, and she loved it with a passion. And unfortunately, when she was 18 or 19, her legs became completely crippled with arthritis. And so she had to become a teacher, which she did not want to do. She wanted to be a famous ballerina. And she became very, very cruel. And she would hit her students and shame them and be very cruel to them. And it was interesting because my client has pursued dance in this lifetime, and they have done very, very well in dance. They own dance studios, and they are very kind people, a kind person, non-judgmental. And it clearly stemmed from this lifetime, and also accounted for why the client had worked so hard to become a great dancer, because they didn't get to fulfill it in that other lifetime. So those were some things. I also met an enslaved African-American woman in the South who was picking cotton. Also a lovely young lady who is a red-haired indentured servant from Ireland. I'm trying to think who else. Anyway, I met all kinds of people. It was a great week for work. And, my job, I don't know, what can I tell you? I adore it. So just at the end of this, I'm going to say tomorrow I have a group past life regression from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. If you're interested in perhaps joining us, it's a 2-hour session. And you can email me at healingacrosstime@gmail.com, and I can give you all the details. It's $88 for the 2 hours, a way to dip your toe in the water and see if past life regression might be something you're interested in trying more fully. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you another time. Bye.